Mitch Griffis and Austyn Carta-Samuels. Dude, I'm back stateside, and you're back from where, Mitch? Where were you this past weekend?
I took a trip down to old Winston-Salem to watch the fellas at Wake play some ball.
I mean, can we acknowledge what a good guy this guy is? That he goes to Wake last year. It doesn't go the way that we would have all liked to hope it go. And then he goes down there, dude, and he's got fat heads of all his teammates and is cheering in the front row for these guys. Is that what it looked like down there, Mitch?
Yeah, exactly. I had my shirt off with Wake painted across my chest for the guys.
Coach Clausen turned around, dude, blew you a kiss. It was a great Saturday down in Winston-Salem, man.
Exactly.
Well, we won't get into the extra co-curriculars. I'm sure you kept it super light and easy as you reunited with all your boys. But regardless, we had a week of college football, and I think we're in a little bit of a disagreement here. I actually thought it was a pretty explosive week. Every time you have kind of a dead week, or what last week I thought was really quiet, then I feel like you get some fireworks or explosive power. But then this guy's sitting over here telling me like, yeah, it wasn't really that big a week. So why don't you claim why it wasn't a big week, and then I'll tell you why you're wrong.
All right. I misspoke there. I didn't mean it was a bad week. Obviously, we had a great game with Bama and Georgia, and UK, upset Ole Miss, and I don't know. I just feel like it was a pretty run-of-the-mill college football week. I feel like we're not in the thick of conference play yet, so it hasn't seen those exciting in-conference games just yet. There's a few, and okay, I'm spoiled. Like college football. I watch any college football game, so I don't know what the hell I'm saying, but I don't know. Was it? Honestly, now that I think about it, it was a good week. you kind of got me, but I got sick to my guns. So
I appreciate your backpedal, even though you're kind of sticking to your guns there. But we'll go with something that I do agree with that you just said was we're not in the thick of all of it yet. So like Mitch and I were talking before this, just the implications in college football now. It's kind of interesting how we're going to talk about Georgia and Alabama in just a second, but like how Georgia lost, and yes, they have a loss on their record, but in terms of the playoff implications, like, and being one of the best 12 teams in the country, like, it's almost as if they didn't even really take much of a step back there, like, in terms of what that game means. Is that kind of how you see it too, Mitch?
I guess that's what I mean by uneventful. Like, Ole Miss loses, Georgia loses. Like, it matters, but those teams can still make the playoffs.
Right.
Like it matters, but it doesn't really matter. Like you might have a seeding, you might not host a home game now, but other than that, it doesn't really matter. So I guess that's what I mean by it wasn't as exciting of a week, just because nobody got eliminated. People are still in the hunt, and Georgia's gonna crawl their way back up. They'll finish the season ranked second or third. They're not going anywhere. Ole Miss will finish in the top 10 as long as they win out. I don't know who's on the rest of their schedule,
right?
But there's just so much football left to be played, and there's so many opportunities to get in that's why I really kind of take everything with a grain of salt, because Alabama's leaving that game and they're excited, but they know in the back of their minds that was one of two, maybe three.
Right.
So right. It's just the start of it, and it was hell of a game. I'm so glad I got to watch, and obviously I'm thankful for any football game that's on. So that's kind of what I meant by not super exciting, just because it's great, but there's so much ball left to be played.
Dude, no, I totally agree with that. So we've come full circle. See the kumbaya? We're on the same page here. But now, real quick, like, do you think, because sometimes people, like, they insinuate that a game doesn't matter, you know what I mean? And, like, no, games all matter at all times. There's never a game that doesn't matter. But I want to put you on the spot, Mitch, with this. Do you think knowing that you can lose a game and still go changes at all the urgency or desperation week to week in your games? Do you think that there's a little bit more comfort there, or no? You think it's probably still the same hair on fire?
I would say the hair is still on fire, because it's Georgia, Alabama, dude.
Right.
Was it 1 versus 2 or 1 versus 2 versus 3?
Technically, it was like 2 versus 4. I think
2 versus 4. Okay, like in Tuscaloosa, if your hair is not on fire,
that place is electric, dude.
Electric, dude. Like, electric.
The light and shit that they do now in these stadiums, and like just the camera angles and everything. Like, I think Greg McElroy, who obviously played quarterback at Alabama, he was like, dude, like, being in Bryant-Denny this weekend, he's like, I've never felt the place like that. And it's crazy to think of all the teams that they've had and all the national championships and Saban, and to say a former Alabama quarterback say that was the loudest and most electric he'd ever seen the stadium. Like, I honestly think there's some level of production that goes into that. Because I went to a Texas game last year, dude, and they had drones up in the sky with lights on them that were making shapes in the sky above the stadium while fireworks were going off. And I was like, dude, what AI world are we living in now, man?
Yeah, it's definitely nuts. There's definitely a lot more going on than the football game. But yeah, I think your hair's still on fire. But I will say after the fact, there's a little bit less of panic.
Right.
Because, and honestly, I think it's good for a team. Like if you look at Georgia, they're probably like good luck. Whoever's next, the next 4 or 5 weeks it's done. They're getting waxed.
Right.
And it kind of adds some motivation. And not that those teams don't work hard, but it's like, all right, we're not perfect. We can lose. Let's figure some things out. Let's get better. And you kind of go into that mindset of, hey, let's keep winning, and hey, let's get better. And I think that's even a better mindset to have.
Right.
And so I think the hair's still on fire at the game, but post game there's a little less panic. I'm sure Kirby Smart winning that game. I'm sure he was upset and frustrated with how they played in the first half, but he's telling them, "Hey, we won the second half. We kicked ass in the second half. We really did, and we're gonna see him again, and we might see him a third time. All we can do is focus on getting better going forward, and when they play again, it's gonna be another 3-point game. So it's just something else to wait for."
100%. And that, I mean, it rolls into, so guys, what we want to cover today is like UGA versus Bama, obviously. Kentucky beating Ole Miss at Ole Miss is a pretty big one. Yeah. Arizona beating Utah on the road at Utah, regardless of whether Cam Rising's in the game or not. Like, yeah, we'll talk about that one a little bit as well. And then we'll just spray a little bit of attention down to CU, who's now 4-1 after beating UCF as like 13-point underdogs this week. Just a pretty impressive win for Dion. And you also have Travis Hunter and Shador, who both played really, really well. So anyway, as we get into Georgia and Bama, I think, Mitch, why don't we start with like, what were your big takeaways from the game, and then throw it back to me so I can drill you with my takeaways, and then let's kind of work it together.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think we're gonna have the same big takeaway here.
Yeah.
Once we get talking about it, but the biggest thing was just Bama got up to such a big lead. I mean, at one point it was like everything was going wrong for Georgia, but it wasn't even just that. Just Bama looked so good, and everything was going right because. Yeah, Georgia was beating themselves in some ways, Georgia was beating themselves, but Bama was making plays, dude.
Right.
Like plays. Like when I was watching the game and I was like, oh shit, dude, like this is unreal. When Milroe had that run down the sideline,
yeah.
He just he took over and kind of what we talked about, last week was we said Milroe's gonna have to be Superman to win that game.
Yeah.
And he was, but in reality, dude, Bama looked like the better team.
Yeah, they did.
Like he won the game for those guys. Like he played out of his mind, and he's right now he's number one in the Heisman race.
I agree.
No question. He is number one.
Yeah.
And he deserves it. He played his ass off. But like it wasn't just him. Like they looked phenomenal. Like they looked really, really good. And I'm curious to see what you think about this. But my biggest takeaway of the whole season so far was Bama's up a ton. Then you start to give the lead away. Then you go down. And you're like, oh, shit. Are we about to give up a 28-0 or 28-7 lead, whatever it was, and lose this thing at home? And they're down for 30 seconds. And then Milroe just throws a jump ball, and that kid makes an unbelievable play. But it was just – I know it was a quick, and it wasn't like a crazy long drive, and the kid made a great play. But it was still just – you were up a ton. Now you're down. And have it late in the game, and then having the mental fortitude and the will to go put up a touchdown and take the lead again is just super, super impressive. Just because the emotions of we're running away with this thing, these kids we're crushing these guys, to oh shit, we're down. Did we just blow this? To let's go win this thing. So I thought that was super impressive. People don't understand the emotions of that. To be up and then down,
up 30-7, bro.
Yeah,
up
30-7.
30-7, and then to be down 34-33.
Yeah, that was the score. Yeah, like
crazy.
It's easier to come back from a deficit than to be up, then get back down and then go up.
Right.
Like the win gets taken out of your sails when you give up that touchdown and they take the lead and that place is silent, dude. All the momentum is gone. So I thought that was super impressive. I'm sure you have something similar to say, but I'll shut up and let you speak.
No, I'll say. I mean, I agree with all the things that you just said, and then the only thing that I thought, two things was. Kalen DeBoer, like, dude, That guy, so for those of you guys that don't know, Kalen DeBoer is obviously the head coach that replaced Nick Saban at Alabama, but he was the head coach at Washington last year. And, me being up in the coaching community for a while, I've known about Kalen DeBoer for a long time. And that man is somebody who has stood on what he believes in for years, has worked his way all the way up. One of the cool things for you guys listening is Kalen DeBoer has been very different than other head coaches who have been promoted. He tells the next administration that he's going to coach for, I will not be told who I'm hiring. I'm bringing my guys with me. He's one of the only coaches in the country that has done that at every juncture. So we're talking guys, I think it was Eastern Washington was where he started or something like that. And we're talking about him taking guys from Eastern Washington all the way up to Washington, all the way to Bama. I just really, really applaud and respect that. Him having his guys in a frame of mind ready to play, but something else underneath the game that Mitch and I, quarterbacks, you guys that are quarterbacks, dude, what he did at Washington with Penix and what he showed in the first half with Alabama and Jalen Milroe is in these tight games, these big games where there's a lot of thickness just in the air and you're trying to create momentum in these things, this guy is aggressive as hell. So it's he is always attacking. Yeah. And it's not that they didn't attack in the second half. I mean, think about the fact that they threw a streak with 2 minutes left on first down. Think about that, backed up in their own territory. When most teams are yo, let's run the ball or sprint them out and get a first down, they throw a streak. So I thought that that is just something that, again, it's not a knock in any way, shape, or form against the greatest coach of all time, Nick Saban, but the way that he allowed Jalen Milroe to play in that first half was, as much as people think Jalen Milroe just balled out and played unbelievable, which, guys, he did. I'm not saying he didn't, but you know how many different sets and formations they came out in that first half? You know how many motions and things they used to create disadvantages that then allowed him to do his thing? How many times, I had never seen it in my life, how many times did he get the edge on a Georgia defense? It was 4 or 5 times where this guy got the edge. It's good coaching football 101 in Pop Warner is don't let them get outside. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it wasn't that Kirby Smart just coached his DN shitty that day. You know what I mean? They were doing things within the game that again, just Kalen DeBoer, tip of the cap, dude. That was really impressive. And then the other thing that we can talk about a little bit is I just think that Carson Beck clearly played like shit in the first half. Yeah. And it was one of the first times, if the only time, that I've ever seen him actually look like shit. Miss throws that were there. Throw that one dropped interception where it was a slant on the right and he just stared at it and the Will just ran in front of it and dropped it. That was a pick where I was dude, one of the best 3-4 quarterbacks in the country doesn't do that unless he's feeling 100,000 people right now. So I thought that was super interesting, but then here's where it goes is this is the thing is Mitch said earlier, I think that in some ways, or he said, watch out the next teams that have to play Georgia, that with what they just learned about themselves. Yeah. Not only the resiliency, what I loved was what was the question coming in offensively about Georgia? It was they don't have Brock Bowers anymore. They don't really have that guy. No one knows who that guy is. So if Alabama's going to play man coverage, they don't know who that guy is. This is where within the scope of the game, in that first half, they took a couple shots early and they didn't hit. And then the game kind of froze. And they were in their head, it just looked discombobulated as shit, all of it. Pardon my language here, but come out in the second half, it was very clear that Mike Bobo and Carson Beck both said, fuck it. Yeah. And they put that ball up in the air over and over again. Probably did it so many times that that's the reason the Alabama corner picked it on the last play of the game was because they literally put the ball up like that. Yeah. But when you have that type of success through the air, doing it that way, you almost just experienced an identity shift in that Georgia offense. Yeah. Where they go, yeah, we can pound the stone. Yeah, we can call some perimeter screens and do some things, but we can also put this bitch up and let our guys go play. Yeah. So I think that's an undertone of Mitch, what you said, where you were like, dude, like, this might actually be something that benefits them more than anybody else over the course of the full season. You want to just sprinkle a little bit of your perspective there on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think when they did, you're at a point down 30-7, and we always think Georgia's identity, is pounding the rock, and they kind of had to get away from that and experiment a little bit and take some shots, and they made a lot of plays and made a comeback. And I think, like you said, it kind of just shows that they can be successful in multiple ways on offense, and probably found some guys that can do it versus probably the best defense that they're going to play all year. And yeah, just like you said, I think this will benefit them going forward. Also puts a chip on their shoulder. Just something like, I remember in high school, we went 10-0 3 straight years, or we were 9-1 then 10-0 10-0. And we never had like a tough regular season loss.
Yeah.
And I kind of always wish that we had a tough regular season loss.
Right.
Because when you get to the playoffs, every game's going to be tight. Every game's going to be a close game. But we hadn't experienced that loss, and maybe could have used an extra push, in a certain week of practice. And I always think that good teams that lose, it's always a positive. It always is a positive because they get to reassess themselves. They kind of get to understand things they got to work on, understand they are beatable, which can make you more motivated. And not that these guys don't work hard, like I said, but I think with a good team, a Kirby Smart-led team, a loss will end up being a good thing for them.
Totally. Well, let's kind of use that exact same logic and transition into a team that I think fits exactly underneath what you just said, which is I think Ole Miss grows a lot through this past week. Like, for those that don't know, Ole Miss has been rolling, like absolutely rolling. They bought their roster big time through the transfer portal over this past offseason, but they had a lot of great guys coming back, right? And so they've been absolutely pounding people. And then you get Kentucky, who got their ass kicked by South Carolina and then played Georgia really tight, comes into Oxford. Tough place to play, dude. Tough place to play. Yeah. And you get into this defensive rock fight a little bit. And at the end of the game, like, Kentucky ends up winning that thing on a nice last drive there that then Ole Miss got the ball back with like a minute left. And more or less, like, just that's what it is. So Jackson Dart, all these implications of, Ole Miss only scored 17 points at home. Like, really? So Mitch, kind of just give a broad overview and then any specifics as well. But like, on why you see that this game this past Saturday could be a big thing for Ole Miss moving forward.
Yeah, and I think the situation's a little bit different than Georgia in the sense that I don't know the rest of Ole Miss's schedule, but I assume they're going to play a Tennessee or a Georgia or Alabama. They're going to play at least one of them.
Yep.
And 2 losses might keep you out of the playoff. It might. It'll be. I'll be curious to see what happens. So
they play. They play Georgia, they play Oklahoma, and they play LSU. Those are the three big ones that they play.
Yeah, and those are tough teams. So you got to go to really have a shot. You
can only lose one.
You can only lose.
You can only lose one, and that one needs to be Georgia.
It's got to be Georgia. It's got to be a tight game.
Which means that, just for anybody listening, the game in 2 weeks when Ole Miss plays LSU will be the game where one of those teams will be out of playoff contention after.
Exactly, 100%. And I definitely think that a positive thing. I definitely think the guys at Ole Miss play very loose. I think it's a culture established by Lane Kiffin. I think the guys definitely feel like they can be themselves. It's definitely a loose program, a loose culture.
Hey, you want a sweet story real quick about what Mitch is talking about? Okay.
Yeah,
the looseness of Lane Kiffin. I loved this story. I'm sitting there on a recruiting visit, like a quarterback that I worked with as a 5-star that we went on the visit, and we're sitting there with the coaches at Ole Miss, and the wide receivers coach goes, "You guys want to know when I knew that Lane Kiffin, was that guy on offense?" And I was like, yeah, of course. And he's like, our starting running back was up in the hotel and he was late for the pregame meal. And if you're late for pregame meal, dude, that is a no-go, dude.
Just go home.
Just go home. So everybody's waiting in pregame meal for where's our starting running back? Starting running back comes down the elevator. Elevator doors open. Lane Kiffin's standing in the hallway in between the meal room and the elevator. And the running backs coach is standing at the meal room. The running backs coach starts sprinting to the elevator to go charge his guy up, right? And Lane goes, hey, Kevin, and pulls him over. And he goes, don't spook the horses. And it was essentially like, we'll deal with this shit on Sunday or Monday. Don't fuck with him right now. Like, let him be where he's at. So anyway, just a cool Lane Kiffin story there about what Mitch is talking about just being able to play loose like that.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of vibe I get from Lane Kiffin. And not that I'm sure he is. There's a lot of accountability in his program. You don't have a successful program in the SEC without having rules and accountability.
For sure.
But he gets it, bro. He gets it. If you're a starting running back at Ole Miss and they're playing in the SEC, you need your horses to play.
Right.
So he's just the kind of guy that gets it, and that's what I like about him. And I can definitely see a looseness about it. And I can see him getting frustrated, but I can also see him being like, all right, well, fuck, that one sucked. Let's just figure it out, and we'll keep going. I think it just kind of relays to the guys like, all right, like we took an L, but if he's not stressing, and we got things, I'm sure he's coaching them hard and fixing things and whatnot, but I'm sure that looseness is contagious and kind of makes the guys stress out a little bit less, even though they are definitely under more stress than Georgia or another, Georgia with the one-loss Georgia team. So that's kind of my take on it, and I think that just kind of hey, business as usual. We fucked up, but let's move on. So that's my take from it.
Yeah, I also think that offensively they have a lot of weapons, and they run a scheme that they adhere to pretty strongly, and to be shut down like that against Kentucky, what people don't know about Kentucky is like they have a very, very good defensive front. Yeah. And then their corners are always super long. So Stoops, he recruits like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" corners because he wants that length outside. So I think that there were definitely things within the game that Kentucky presented defensively that gave Ole Miss fits, that now Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin and that offense get to go back to the drawing board. They know that teams are going to try to hit them with that, but it's almost as if they got exposed to something that they weren't prepared for fully, and now they can kind of fill those gaps in,
100%.
And that may make them a much better football team moving forward. Sorry, Stoops and Kentucky. I wish we spent a little bit more time on you, dude, but hell of a win. And Stoops is kind of his MO to me, coaching in the SEC for 5 years, playing against his defense for 3 years. Like, Stoops is going to always recruit really well, and NIL has hurt that a little bit, but he's going to play great schematic defensive football and force you to beat him. And so, like, the reason that they didn't beat Georgia had nothing to do with the defense. It was they couldn't move the ball at all. Like, the reason that South Carolina kind of got in their ass was because they couldn't move the ball at all. Yeah. So just cool to see Kentucky, like, stay the course, pull one out. Because, again, going into Oxford and beating the number 6 team in the country in that environment, that's never easy. So tip of the cap to old Big Blue, dude. Hopefully those fans in Kentucky chill out a little bit, because they can get pretty chaotic over there when shit goes sideways. But then the last two. So let's kind of lump them both together, Mitch. But Arizona beats Utah, and then CU moves to 4-1 after beating UCF down at UCF. So what do you think about those two games?
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered this a little bit, and anytime you go into Utah, it's a tough place to play, a really tough place to play, and they got a great football team. Kyle Whittingham is an awesome coach. I mean, such a great guy, such a great coach, and they've got a great program there, great culture, and I don't know for sure, but I don't think it's a program really built on transfers, and to have that kind of success and home grow some kids, that's still really impressive in college football. That's very hard to do. And I know Cam Rising wasn't playing, but going into Utah is a really tough place to play and a tough win, especially with, like, they got guys everywhere, dude. They're putting dudes in the league every single year.
Yeah.
So it's not just a Cam Rising show. And Fafita played really well. Wasn't super wowing in the stat section, but just made plays when they needed to make plays. And I know you're a huge fan of him. And you watched the game a little bit more intently than I did, so I'd love to hear what you have to think, and we'll get into Colorado after that. But I know you love Fafita, and you were just telling me the plays that he made. What were some of the things he did down the stretch that just kind of separated it? Because it really wasn't a close game, but it just was a constant. It was close enough that they didn't pull away. They pulled away towards the end, but it wasn't. The game was never out of reach. But Fafita still played at a high level throughout the game.
Yeah. So the reason that I love Fafita so much is because of his football IQ. Like, just as you watch him play, there are guys who you can just watch play, and you know that think Tom Brady with Bill Belichick. It's like, yeah, they have the best coach in the NFL, but they also have the best coach at quarterback in the NFL too. And you could just tell. You could tell with how he managed the game. Like what I saw out of Fafita, I think he only threw for 185 yards.
Yeah.
But name dropping my story is like I played in all the SEC stadiums, guys, and I played at Utah. And I'm telling you right now, besides an Alabama and LSU, I never played at Auburn, but besides Alabama and LSU and South Carolina's really close there, Utah is as loud and raucous and as you can imagine, like metal aluminum stadium or whatever, and you're down underneath them and they kind of have like a bowl on top of you down in that thing. So the way the sound works and all of that, like again, and it was a blackout game, so like everybody in the crowd was there. It was nuts. And what I saw was like Fafita in the third quarter making plays where it's like he dirts a ball when 95% of quarterbacks would get sacked. And he knows like this game is being played as a traditional rock fight. It's 16-3. The only way I can screw this up is if momentum shifts. And we talked about it last week, like managing momentum is a part of the quarterback position. And so just knowing when those types of plays needed to be made. And again, it's not even necessarily making a big explosive play. It's avoiding their play that gets them going. And he did it multiple times. And then there were just a couple balls in the last two drives of the game where they needed first downs. And he made big plays in those situations just to keep the chains moving. No touchdown, no result, but just ran the clock and was able to win that football game. And like, those are the types of plays that are required when you go play on the road against a top 10 football team. But the story of the game, I just don't know shit about their defense is Arizona's defense. Like them holding Utah to 3 points until the very end of the game. Like,
it's impressive.
It's impressive because Utah's a team that, like Mitch was talking about, like they're known for their trenches. Like their offensive and defensive lines, like they have the whole Polynesian Tongan thing going in terms of their recruiting and how they work down there. And so they're always super strong in the trenches. And Arizona is kind of almost the opposite historically. Like they have good skill guys and like are never really physical. And so to go into that environment and win that game, just a big one. So tip of the cap to old Arizona. We'll see where that takes them this season. And then what we've talked about this whole episode is like Utah is still very well alive because hopefully they get Cam Rising back here soon.
Yeah.
And in the Big 12, like you're going to have an opportunity against every team you play the rest of the season to win those games. Yeah. So it'll be fun to see how they respond. And then Colorado and UCF. So Dion, Shador, the team, they go down to UCF. They're almost 2 touchdown underdogs. And in my opinion, it was the first like complete football game that I saw CU play. Like their defensive line was getting after KJ Jefferson, who is the transfer from Arkansas, who's a good football player. And they got after him.
Yeah.
Like Travis Hunter, we talked about Jalen Milroe being the front runner for the Heisman. But like, if we're going outside of that, like,
number 2.
Dude.
Yeah.
This guy's playing 100 snaps a game. He has 100 yards receiving every game.
Yeah.
And I think he has like 4 or 5 picks. Like, I think he's like leading the country or second the country in picks. It's like.
I don't know if he's there, but he's getting close to like a Tyrann Mathieu type level. Just like a dude that's like doing it all. And we'll see. It's getting close. It's been fun to watch.
It is getting close. He hit the Heisman pose this week, and it was like Desmond Howard, dude. Like, and it was a hell of a pick that he had. And so, anyway, it's Mitch and I have been kind of hard on CU a couple times just because there's a lot of glitz and glam there, just in terms of the way that they run their mouth after a win, but then they lose and they're kind of sour about it against Nebraska. And it's like just not a whole lot of consistency there. It's the roller coaster emotionally, which like for us, like we're kind of football traditionalists in the sense that you kind of respect the game a little bit more than that. But you got to give credit when it's due. And it's interesting just to see a team now that's 4-1 and like they've had, a lot of people say a lot of things about them for a long time, and to be playing good football and momentum is a crazy thing. So like, I'd love to finish this episode with that, Mitch. It's just like, you go from, I think they had no business beating Baylor. They completed a Hail Mary and then won the game after that.
Yep.
Like there was one of their games early in the season that was close too. I think
North
it was
Dakota State.
North Dakota State was super close.
Yeah.
And then you go into, like, you get your ass kicked by Nebraska. You go into UCF, and, like, you put it on UCF.
Yeah.
Momentum is definitely now on the other side. Where it's like, I heard Joel Klatt, he's former CU quarterback, and he was talking about how, like, the over-under win total for CU going into the season was 4.5.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what the expectations were. Of course, not to that locker room, but to at scale. Like, Vegas ain't wrong very often. There's a reason why they got huge fountains and all that shit in front of their, you know. But so they say 4.5, and it's like, you're already at 4.
Yeah.
So now you're starting to that feeling changes a little bit. So, Mitch, kind of dig into your intuition and talk about just like that changing of the guard emotionally and what can happen there that can actually like change the way a team plays the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas always knows, so it's good to beat Vegas. Like when you're beating Vegas, it's like, all right, if we can beat Vegas, dude, we can beat anybody. It's just like as weird as it is, dude. They're not wrong very much, but yeah, I have to give them a lot of credit. They are a very confident bunch, and I think Deion does a great job of instilling confidence in a lot of those players, and I think he does a great job of letting a lot of those players be themselves. We've talked a lot about identity crises and a lot about being put in a box on the show, and that is a guy that will not put anybody in a box. You are allowed to be you 24/7, and I respect that because he's the same way. And they put a target on their backs. That target is they have no one to blame but themselves for putting it on their back.
For sure.
And when you talk that much game and you kind of bring that attention to yourself and then back it up, that's a really hard thing to do. Because nobody, if they were 5-7 and they were quiet, everybody, oh, it's cool. Like Colorado, the 2 kids playing for their dad, like that's awesome. Deion's doing a great job, but they've put like on themselves like national championship expectations.
Well, so dude, the quote is, "You better get us now. You better get us now." Like he said that shit 100 times last year. Like, you better beat us now because you ain't gonna beat us moving forward. So that target that he's talking about. All you had to do is watch Dan Lanning put it on him last year and see the way Dan Lanning felt about what he was doing to know the way that people feel about kind of some of the way that CU does their business. But yeah.
So it's they put a target on their own back, but they're backing it up and they're playing good ball. So credit to them. That's a really hard thing to do. So I got to give them props. They're 4-1. I don't know who they play this week, but 4-1.
4-1.
That's a damn good start to a college football season.
Yes, it is, dude. There are a lot of teams out there right now that wish they were 4-1. So, guys, Bama, huge win at home. Really excited to see what Jalen Milroe continues to do under Kalen DeBoer. Like, if you want to go look up some stats, dude, go look up what that guy's doing on the ground and through the air. I mean, and again, to watch him turn up the sidelines the way he did, the way that Mitch referred to, it was like, that kind of looked like the fastest player in college football, too. So, it's pretty nuts to watch him. Kentucky, big win in Oxford against Ole Miss. Arizona beating Utah. CU moving to 4-1. I mean, I think it was a decently explosive week, and it's only going to get thicker. But Mitch, anything else?
Nope. No, is always thankful for some good college football.
Always thankful for some good conversation with my boy Mitch, even though he sounds like he swallowed a frog in Winston-Salem this past week. All right, guys, we'll see you episode 20 here in a second. Peace.